We have all been asked by our doctor if we are aware of a family history for a specific malady. While I am not aware of any, I can't help but think to myself, how far am I actually tracing this? Human beings have long been propagating the earth, and I know my history spans far beyond my immediate family. Unfortunately, life is busy, and it can be easy to lose contact with more distant family members, thus losing a significant understanding of where we come from. I decided to embark on a journey to bridge that gap in my life. I wanted to know where I came from. Why do I have the talents that I do? Is there anything medically I should worry about? Are there special talents running in my family that I could learn to tap into? The time had come to get the answers I was looking for. To start the journey, my kids and I piled up in the car and headed off to Independence, Missouri to visit with my Aunt Elinor and Uncle Jim. Aunt Elinor represents my father's paternal side of the family, as she is my grandfather's sister. I never got the chance to meet either of my grandfathers, so this part of the journey I was excited to make. Aunt Elinor had certainly prepared for the occasion, and she was able to retrieve dozens of pictures depicting my father's paternal history. She also invited my father's two cousins, William and Richard, to join in on the conversation. I quickly discovered the answer to my first question: is there any medical history I should be aware of? I'm glad I asked. I learned a distant uncle had died at age 13 months. Cause of death: a hole in his heart. Now heart conscious, I decided to ask a few questions of concern.
Sometimes my heart feels like it kind of skips a beat. And I know that, do you have that too?
Yeah, and our daughter has it.
It seems to have, gotten worse, as, I get older. And so now it's up to where it might last for, an hour or something like that.
Like it'll just keep skipping beats?
It just go wild, it just race and race and race.
There was a family member present in the medical field, and she provided valuable information I will certainly keep in mind.
You're short of breath and your legs are swelling. If you have a lot of other side effects from it, you get dizzy, you're passing out, then of course you definitely need to go and see your doctor.
Or your heart starts racing.
Yeah, your heart starts racing.
Uncle Jim had some very logical advice of his own.
You train your heart not to do that.
The trip had already turned out to be one well worth making. Now I was ready to discover information regarding the various talents that have been present in the history of my genetic makeup. I knew from a young age that I was interested in writing and the creative arts. At age 9, a teacher had given me the encouragement to pursue writing, and I published a poem in the National Anthology of Poetry at age 12. Because of my interest in the various aspects of human communication, I am now pursuing a degree in broadcasting while working at KOAM, a CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh, Kansas. However, I was unsure where I acquired these traits. My dad owned and operated a business for over a decade and is now the quality control and project manager for HOAD, a subsidy of Wood Group. As of recently, he is a certified welding inspector. I was not surprised to hear that his father was a mechanical engineer for Hewlett-Packard, an American multinational information technology corporation which provides hardware, software, and services to consumers, small and medium-sized businesses, and large enterprises. His son, my Uncle Steve, also works there to this day, and I can still recall when he installed the new computers in my school in the early 90s. As can be understood, I have always found my father's side of the genetic pool to be mathematically inclined, and I always wondered why I missed out on interest in projects involving math and science. That was when I was introduced to the story of Eddie Jones, my great-uncle and father of William and Richard.
Well, he was a performer in the 40s. They found out that he had been on radio in Denver as a teenager, so when they found that out during World War II, he was drafted from his job at Pratt & Whitney to perform on the radio here in Kansas City. They fed CBS radio. After that, then he was at several different radio and television stations, local type things like KOA in Denver, and he also did a radio program there in Denver where he was Jack Armstrong, the All-American Boy.
He did some news.
Yes, he did, when he was at KXCR.
Yeah.
He was the general manager at KXTN.
He was in program management.
And he was the general manager of a television station out in Goodland, Kansas.
Goodland?
Yeah, he was, when the Colonel was running Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dad ran some of their advertising through the Southwest. So he knew the Colonel.
He knew the Colonel?
Yeah, he knew the Colonel.
He also went through a period when he wrote a poem per day, as well as had poetry published just like myself. These similarities we share were enlightening, and I was surprised to hear of a relative with a mind that works like mine. My great-uncle Eddie and I do share a number of talents. However, there is one many of the Joneses possessed that I did not remotely get: singing and music. My Aunt Elinor shared a couple of songs written by Eddie.
Pitter-pat on my fast-beating heart, for I'm in love with a girl who's taking me on a merry world. Wearing green the Irish way is most becoming, darling. Sing with me. I've got a shamrock where my heart should be, upright wee bit of heather for my personality.
Yeah, but I didn't get the singing gene. It totally passed me up. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the musical gene passed up my kids too.
Nope, I don't think we got it, guys.
The trip had been a rich one, and Aunt Elinor made sure we had a good meal prior to departure. To end my investigation into my father's paternal family lineage, I read a letter my grandfather wrote to himself at age 21, to be read when he got older. Regarding his various life goals, he said, "To project oneself into the future is an everyday happening. However, to realize that this is one step further than daydreaming, I shall attempt to be more realistic than usual concerning this subject. These things are in my reach. I will keep this optimistic attitude close to my heart and remember to stay motivated and keep looking forward." Having a strong grasp on the nature of the Jones side of my heritage, it was now time to take a look into my paternal grandmother's family history. Unfortunately, she resides in Colorado, and I didn't have the budget to visit her. However, my Uncle Greg Jones was able to provide me with a look deep into the past of the Brackenbury name. And I was surprised to hear that I have an English history well worth remembering, filled with influential individuals, some who even made history. My Brackenbury heritage can be traced as far back as the 1470s. Sir Robert Brackenbury came into the service of Richard, Duke of Gloucester, brother of King Edward IV. As a reward for his loyalty, he was awarded the position of Constable of the Tower for life. Later that year, he helped subdue the rebellion of the Duke of Buckingham and was given many more rewards. Throughout the course of his service, he became one of the king's most rewarded subjects. His loyalty remained strong up until his death. In 1485, the Earl of Richmond returned to England with the intent to seize the throne. Although the Earl and his army were successful in their conquest, Brackenbury did not back down. He died honorably alongside King Edward IV in an effort to secure the throne. His valiant efforts were not forgotten, and he was even made a minor character in Shakespeare's Richard III as the lieutenant of the Tower when Clarence was in prison there. During the 1500s, a number of Brackenburys were jurors in the manor of Belchford, and in the late 1700s, another poet in my family line made his mark in history. Joseph Brackenbury of Lincolnshire was published in the Natale Solum and other poetical pieces by subscription. In more recent years, General Sir Henry Brackenbury made significant contributions to the British Army, even writing numerous books of military history and memoirs. He was inducted into the Wolseley Ring in 1873, a group that accompanied Garnet Wolseley on his various projects for about a decade. Among the positions he held during the late 1800s included Private Secretary of the Viceroy of India, British Military Attaché in Paris, Assistant Under-Secretary to the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland, a senior role in the River Column in Egypt, Major General for Distinguished Service in the Field, Director of Military Intelligence, President of the War Office Ordnance Committee, Colonel Commander of the Royal Artillery, Director General of Ordnance, and Privy Councillor. During the 1900s, John Brackenbury was named the Warden of the Impington Village College, and his name lives on to this day in the John Brackenbury Awards. He had a goal to create a fund for the benefit of students which would provide support for interests that the college could not normally fund, and, even after his death, he is still able to help motivated students develop hobbies, gain qualifications not available on campus, take part in activities and courses, and assist with travel costs for cultural activities. During the course of my research into the Brackenburys, I was developing much intrigue regarding my roots. However, what is family history without a little drama? In 1892, Joseph Brackenbury made a matrimonial decision that would end up becoming a precedent in contract law read in law schools throughout the country. The conflict centered around the family of his wife, Bertha's mother, and her 6 living children following the death of her husband. With little interest in the family estate, Bertha's siblings dispersed, and her mother, Sarah, convinced the couple to return from California back to Missouri to live with her. Trouble flared within weeks of their arrival. She would forbid them to put up storm windows, bank the house, plow the land, cut the hay, or even stay up past 5 p.m. She continued to push their limits as she made various complaints. According to Sarah, the family moved her things and piled them up, did not feed her properly, and even made bodily threats. This prompted her to take legal action with 2 suits against her son-in-law on trifling matters. She delivered to her son a deed of the premises reserving a life estate in herself in a sale of only $10. During the course of these legal proceedings, the Brackenburys were so fearful that their young son Albert sat up all night with a shotgun across his knee to keep the Hodgkin boys from evicting the family. The lawsuit involved a number of insignificant accusations, and it made daily headlines. The court ruled in favor of the Brackenburys, and it is now a textbook example of enforcement of a unilateral contract. Brackenbury versus Hodgkin appears in many contracts casebooks, and most contract teachers use it as a vivid example of the perils of a shotgun marriage. My understanding of my father's side of the family is now much clearer. With the revelation of a rich past in arts and sciences, and even a regal history in England, I was now ready to delve into the other half of my DNA and begin exploring the traits passed on to me by my mother. For this part of the investigation into my family history, we were about to discover a long past of hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. Society would not last long without food, and my mother's side of the family is rich in agriculture. Both her mother and father grew up in the farming communities of Bourbon County, Kansas. They married young and lived a vivid life growing the food our nation relies on.
I was 17 and he was 20-some.
Both of my maternal grandparents quit school at the primary level to work on the farm.
That's one thing about the country. It's peaceful out there, you know, in the country.
Mm-hmm. Do you miss it?
Yeah. I like it better in town.
Although education was not promoted in my grandfather's family, he possessed brain power superior to all of his equal grade level peers in the entire county.
When Al graduated from grade school, that's as far as he went, 8th grade, they had some sort of comprehensive test that everybody took, and he scored the highest in Bourbon County.
Wow, that's impressive.
So he was no dummy. But Uncle Earl didn't believe in education going on any further. They had all the education they needed to be helpful on the farm, so.
I met with his cousins Dawn and Darrell. Darrell traveled in from Silver Spring, Kansas, and I was surprised to find that my distant cousin Dawn lives just miles from me, and I regret that I am only meeting him now. Just as Aunt Elinor, they provided plenty of pictures to provide me with a visual comprehension of the array of individuals who make up our family history. While few pictures of my grandfather survived a devastating flood that impacted my grandmother in the early 80s.
We had that flood, you know, back in 86 or 80, sometime on there. We had 2 different floods, but one of them was the one that got it.
Dawn and Darrell did have a rare photograph of him when he was very young, and I was humbled to see the history of grueling hard work my family history holds.
So while he was doing that, was he also farming at the same time?
Yeah.
Must have been busy.
He was.
Did you ever get to see him?
Midnight. No, when he hauled milk over to Iola, you'd see him maybe at midnight, or because he liked to talk. He'd stop at the restaurant over there at Lay Hart, no, Gas City, and drink coffee and eat pie. And then when he didn't have the milk route, he went out to the field and worked till about midnight.
Wow. So you'd work in the dark?
Yeah.
How'd he do that?
I don't know. He's just used to it.
Learning more about my maternal grandfather, I also discovered where I acquired my ability to multitask.
He was always in a hurry.
He would get frustrated. He'd get very frustrated sometimes, trying to get everything done, trying to work his milk route or later postmaster job, and then try to keep up with his farming. And that's why he's always on the run.
Interestingly, I even found out where my 2 sons get their physical attributes. While I thought they looked a little like me, turns out I did pass on some genetic makeup after all.
What's this little guy's name?
That's Jake.
Jacob. He looks like Al.
Does he?
Yes, he does.
My grandmother was able to elaborate into the talents of my grandfather, and once again, I found that we possess even more genetic code geared toward musical talent.
He had a fiddle
Okay.
and harmonica, he liked that.
While I do not share the ability to play musical instruments, he also wrote songs, a talent I know I inherited. In fact, one was so impressive that it was heard on the radio, but at my grandfather's expense.
Yeah, we did hear it on the radio. It was, we went down to Oklahoma to one of those bluegrass and talked to this guy that sung the song. And of course he never did pay, give him anything. And then he just really stole it.
He completely stole it because it wasn't
Yeah.
copyrighted or anything.
No, he did. He
Wow.
The Lore family history was a healthy one, and Dawn and Darrell could not recall anyone who had died of complications. Although their father had a mass on his pancreas, it did not become tumorous.
But it never developed into anything. That's good. Never advanced. He died because he had a stroke and went to sleep.
However, on my grandmother's side, heart trouble once again lingers.
And then he got up to walk to the bathroom and he had one of those heart attacks that kills you right off. And then some of my other uncles died with a heart attack, just like he did. And then mom's, well, of course, that's on my dad's side. But her dad died that way too.
And I also need to be aware of my eye health.
Mom was the first one that had that macular degeneration. They said it could be inherited because, see, Mom went blind. And I got it too. And this eye can't see hardly anything out of it.
Really?
And this one I still got 20/20 vision, but I don't know what I got now.
In addition to learning from first-hand experience the importance of copywriting pieces of music and literature, I also learned how crucial it is to produce a will in the event of death. When my grandfather Stuart passed away unexpectedly, he had not drafted one, and the results were devastating to the family. My grandmother's parents had oil on their land to which they possessed rights. When the massive heart attack claimed my grandfather's life,
But my brother got it all.
Oh, really? Was there not a will made out or anything?
Daddy just talked about it. He never had gotten it, but he was going to, but, you know, he went first. Yeah, he just moved in, him and his family,
Uh-huh.
and went from there.
while unfortunate that I will never see any profits from this family oil rights, on a lighter note, I also learned that on my grandmother's side, we are related to the famous Ringling brothers. My kids and I were enjoying our visit with my grandmother, but our time was cut short as a dangerous storm cell made its way into the area, a storm that produced a tornado just a few short miles from our location. I was concerned to find that my grandmother has nowhere to go in the event of severe weather except her bathtub. When I spoke with the manager of the estates, he said they do not have the funding to provide adequate shelter, making me all the more aware of the neglect in my contact with relatives who live so close by.
Oh, guys, look at this one. This is your great-great-great-grandpa. The journey into the history of my family heritage was far more rewarding than I could have ever anticipated. And we're all born, we live a little while, and then we die. And while we know our names will live on in our children, we have the opportunity to foster what will become their beliefs and ideas in the future. Much more rarely do we get the opportunity to find out where we actually came from.
I am so glad that I got this opportunity. From being reunited with people I have not seen in some time, to discovering relatives I have never even met. Even though some live just miles from my home, I now have a much better understanding of who I am and what I stand for. As my Grandpa Jones said, it is important to look ahead, but we must never forget the importance of keeping the past alive.